सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ श्री गणेशाय नमः। ॐ श्री सरस्वत्यै नमः। ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं। समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरं। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवं परमानन्दमाधवम्। सर्ववेदान्तसिद्धान्त गोचरं तमगोचरं गोविन्दं परमानन्दं सद्गुरुं प्रणतोऽस्म्यहम्। So in the last session we had completed the topic of pramāda, inadvertence, carelessness, lack of vigilance, alertness, procrastination. All these are the meanings that come out of the word pramāda. The topic started in verse number 321, where Shankaracharya ji says that pramāda itself is mrityu, is death. Why? Because it is death of the sadhana, it is death of the sadhya, and therefore it is the death for the seeker, sadhaka. So sadhaka not keeping sadhya in front of him or her itself is called as pramāda. That the goal goes out of sight. Now this pramāda, somebody may say that it's okay, next point you can come back. But the danger of this pramāda is explained in the following verses. First, Shankaracharya ji had explained how pramāda leads to vyatha, leads to suffering. So pramāda creates moha, delusion, delusion creates the ahankara. Creates means it revives the ahankara. Then that ahankara further creates bondage, and that bondage leads to suffering. Everything starts with pramāda. Now this pramāda itself earlier was mentioned as vishyanuchintana. Please don't get confused there. Right? Pramāda means what? Not keeping the goal, that supreme Brahman, in your sight and focusing on the world of objects. Thinking that this is going to give me joy. That slip is called as pramāda. Right? Now this is what Vishayanuchintana, which leads to revival of ahankara and samsara and then vyatha, suffering. And even a jnani who is at this stage where tattva jnana has happened and is working on establishing, getting established in that knowledge, for such a person also this pramāda is dangerous. So imagine for the seeker, it is even more dangerous. Point number one. Second point, he said, pramāda done for even a moment is dangerous. Even for a person of that level, it is dangerous. First point. Second point is pramāda done even for a moment, means pramāda happened. Let me not say done, because you don't do it. It happens, right? So even if it happens for a moment, it is dangerous. Example given was of moss, kaivalyaṃ. Remember that you rotate your finger or something in the water, stick in the water, and the moss gets cleaned, gets separated. But the moment you remove it, it again covers the water. In the same way, you are continuously focusing on the goal, focusing on the goal, focusing on the goal. But for a moment, if you defocus, in that much time, this pramāda will take charge and rest all the things will happen within a moment. Second point. Third point, the moment you realize that pramāda has happened and you try to catch up or you try to do it, focus on the goal again, it becomes more and more difficult as the time goes. Why? Because pramāda leads to sorrow in such fast pace, like the ball falling on the steps. First it will be closer, then farther. It will exponentially grow. What? This entire pramāda, samsara, vyatha, etc. And therefore, what you should do? You should make sure that pramāda is not happening. Okay. See, pramāda, as we were mentioning, that it is not something that we do, but it is something that we should avoid. Okay. Nobody is saying that don't do pramāda. Even when it is said that don't do pramāda, what it actually means is be alert, don't let it happen. It's not that somebody is purposely trying to do it. Right? Pramāda is not something like that. Pramāda happens. Now the instruction given is what? Don't let it happen. Means what? Be alert all the time. Be so vigilant that it does not happen. Right? Now how it happens? Now the ladder of fall is given in the two verses 326 and 327. Vishaya chintana leads to shobhana adhyasa. Sankalpayati tadgunan. Shobhana adhyasa means feeling that the objects can give me joy. There is inherent joy in the objects. That is called as shobhana adhyasa. So you start thinking about the objects and you start thinking that they will give me joy. Then sankalpa happens. Sankalpa means wishful thinking. How I wish I had those objects. From sankalpa rises kama. Sankalpanat, samyak sankalpanat kamaha. Desire comes about. Kamat pumsaf pravartanam. And once the desire appears, a person starts to exert, starts to put efforts to gain that object of desire. Tataswarupa vibhramshaha. Once you are focused on gaining the objects for your pleasure, you forget your own self. Swarupa bhramshanat, vibrashtastu patatyadaha. And such a person who is defocused now, one who has fallen from this path, patati, he goes down and down. Patitasya vinanasham punaha aroha na ishyate. And such a person who has fallen, for him the only result is nasha. There is no other possibility of such a person rising again. So this way ladder of fall was explained. Right? So Vishaya Anuchintana is what is called as pramāda. Okay. Here it becomes clear. Now we also saw in the last session that this is very much similar to the ladder of fall from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter. Right? The only difference being there the ladder of fall after desire is, if the desire is not fulfilled, what will happen? Kamat krodha, krodhat, sammoha, smriti vibhrama, etc. Whereas here, how one puts efforts to gain the object of desire and what happens when the desire is fulfilled. Right? So that is the main difference, but the falling, the major is from that pramāda vishayanuchintana dhyana to this kama. That is where we have to stop. Once that kama becomes pravritti or krodha, then gone. Then it is beyond our reach. Then it will end in nasha. That is what will happen. Now how to stop this fall? So Shankaracharya says stop at sankalpa itself. Sankalpam varjayet tasmat. This wishful thinking is what we must avoid. Now here again, if you see the words Shankaracharya is using, he is saying avoid. Means what? It will come. Sankalpa will happen. You avoid it. Okay? He is not saying that that sankalpa should not come. No, it will come. But you avoid it. You ignore that fellow and you go on the other road. Sankalpam varjayet tasmat. Why? Sarva anarthasya karanam. Because that sankalpa is the cause of all anartha, all calamity. Like what example he gives? Apathyani hi vastuni vyadhigrastha yatha utsrajet. Just as a deceased person, a patient, gives up apathya vastu, the objects, the food items which are going to create more problems for that patient. How that patient gives up? In the same way, a seeker should give up sankalpa. Oh, it will be nice if this happens, that will be good if that comes to me, this place I want to go, that object I want, this person should be with me. This kind of wishful thinking is what is going to create problems later on. So avoid that. He concludes, Shankaracharya, in the verse 329, Atah pramādāt na parosti mrityuh. There is no greater or no other death for a seeker than pramāda. Vivekinaha brahmavidaha. For a person who is viveki, who is discriminative and who is the knower of Brahman. Even for such a person, there is no greater death than pramāda. Samadhau samahitaha. One who is totally focused, totally united, samadhau, in the meditation. Siddhim upaiti samyak. He attains siddhi, he attains liberation, he attains the success well. Therefore, samahitatma, being united with this supreme goal, savadhanaha bhava, be extremely alert. So Shankaracharya has explained what is the problem, how that problem leads to your ultimate downfall, how important it is not to, to make sure that the pramāda does not happen, and he has also given the way to avoid that pramāda. In this way, that pramāda topic is completed. Now, this Vishaya Anuchintana or pramāda has got another name. When you say pramāda happens, means you start focusing on the objects. Now, this focusing on the object or reflecting or reminiscing about the object, saying that day will come to me, this is also explained in the Shastra as bheda drishti, that you start seeing something other than you, which is actually one step before Vishayanuchintana. You will start thinking about gaining the object when you start seeing them other than you. Then only you want to gain them, isn't it? Now that bheda drishti, how it is dangerous and how that sarvatma bhava has to be developed, that is the next topic that Shankaracharya has taken up. Verses 330 to 341. Next 12 verses, Shankaracharya explains this topic. Let us begin. One by one we will understand. Verse number 330. Jīvato yasya kaivalyaṃ videhe sacha kevalaḥ yatkiṃcitpaśyato bhedaṃ bhayaṃ brūte yajuḥśrutiḥ jīvato yasya kaivalyaṃ videhe sacha kevalaḥ yatkiṃcitpaśyato bhedaṃ bhayaṃ brūte yajuḥśrutiḥ. Now, see, we have to go back to what was the topic going on. Swanubhava has happened. Suanubhava has happened. Direct experience has taken place. Brahmatmana samsthiti is what is going on. The topic of Brahmatmana samsthiti is going on. Means what? If you remember what we had discussed earlier, a person who has got the self-knowledge, tatvajnana, but is going for jivan mukti, but is trying to be, what we say, trying to abide in that Brahman, so that that bliss of the Supreme can be experienced here and now while living. That is the step that is going on. Now, with respect to that step, Shankaracharya here he says, yasya kaivalyaṃ jīvato. Yasya, for whom, kaivalyaṃ, liberation, jīvato, is while living. Means what? One who is liberated while living, videhe such a kevalaḥ. Such a person, videhe, when the body falls, kevalaḥ, remains liberated. One who is liberated while living remains liberated when the body falls. Means what? One who is jivan mukta becomes videhe mukta when the body falls. In other words, if that, now here one more word has to be thought about. Kaivalya is the word used. Twice it is used. Kaivalya, kevala. Can you see that? Kaivalya means kevalasya bhavaha kaivalyam. There is an Upanishad also by the name Kaivalya Upanishad. Same meaning there also. The Upanishad that takes you to Kaivalya. Kaivalya means kevalasya bhavaha. Kevala means what? Kevala in Marathi, Hindi also we say na, keval utna hi karna. Only that you do. Kevala means only that. That alone. See, this is difference in Indian English and actual English. In Indian English we say only that you do. But in British English, etc., they will say that alone you do. The point is what? Kevala means where there is that and nothing other than that. That is called as kevala. In Shastriya language, earlier also we had seen in so many times, kevala shabda, when it comes, we immediately remember, what is that? Sajatiya, vijatiya, swagata, bheda, rahita. One who has got no differentiation within the species, between the species, or within itself. Sajatiya, between two things of the same species. Vijatiya, between the two kinds of species. Swagata, within itself. There is no distinction, there is no difference. That is called as kevala. Self, Brahman is called as kevala. Why? Because there is nothing of the same species like Atman. There is nothing which is of different species than Atman, and within Atman also there is no difference, there is no distinction. I hope all these things you remember. If you say animal is a species, then cat and dog have got sajatiya bheda. They are two beings of the same species, animal species. Vijatiya bheda means a tree and an animal, different jati. And swagata means within that animal there are bheda, there are differences, hands and legs and stomach and head and tail, etc. Swagata bheda. So everything in the world other than the self, other than Brahman, has got one of these or all of these bhedas, all of these distinctions. Self alone is that kevala who has no distinction. One way of explaining kevala is sajatiya, vijatiya, swagata, bheda rahita. Another way of explaining kevala, which also we have seen earlier, is desha, kala, vastu, aparichinna. That which is unlimited by space, time and object. That which is not limited. In true sense, infinite, limitless. That is called as kevala. So a person becomes kevala means what? Understands that I am that self who is kevala, and thus gains kaivalya, kevalasya bhavaha, the feeling of being that self, that liberation one attains. So when the word kaivalya is used, we should understand they are talking about that kaivalya moksha, liberation. Right? So what is the point Shankaracharya is making here? One who is liberated while living, even at the fall of the body, remains liberated, remains one, remains kevala, remains without any distinction, without any limitation. But yatkiṃcit bhedaṃ paśyatah, but for a person who sees bheda, difference, kevala is what he should experience, but if he experiences bheda, yatkiṃcit, even a bit, kinchit, even a bit of difference if a person sees, bhayaṃ brūte yajuḥśrutiḥ, then there will be fear for such a person, says yajuḥśrutiḥ. Yajuḥśrutiḥ says the Yajurveda. In Yajurveda, one of the famous Upanishads is Taittiriya Upanishad. In that Taittiriya Upanishad, there is this explanation which comes. Yadā hi evesha etasmin udaramantram kurute atatasya bhayaṃ bhavati. Yada, when, he indeed, eva eshaha, this person, udaramantaram kurute, antaram means difference, creates even a wee bit of difference, udaram, aram, even like that small needle hole, even that much of difference if somebody makes, athatasya bhayaṃ bhavati, there will be fear for such a person. What is the point? Abhayam pratistham vindate, another Upanishads, same from Yajurveda only. Where what is said here, a person who gains the kaivalya, that jivan mukti, is experiencing abhaya, fearlessness. Whereas a person who creates even a wee bit of difference experiences fear. In other words, if you are experiencing fear, you have not yet realized. Why? Because once you experience that kaivalya, there is no possibility of fear. But the moment you see something different from you, the moment you make even a slightest of distinction, there arises fear. Now this bheda drishti, creating difference, seeing something other than yourself, is what is going to be the topic. Okay, so he is just coming to the topic. Right? Now what does he say? Same point now he elaborates further. Verse number 331. Yadā kadā vāpi vipaścideṣa brahmaṇyanante'pyaṇumātrabhedam paśyatyathāmuṣya bhayaṃ tadaiva yadvīkṣitaṃ bhinnatayā pramādāt yadā kadā vāpi vipaścideṣa brahmaṇyanante'pyaṇumātrabhedam paśyatyathāmuṣya bhayaṃ tadaiva yadvīkṣitaṃ bhinnatayā pramādāt. Yadā kada, whenever. Yada, when. Yada, when, correct. Not in the question form when, but when that happens, that kind of when. Kada means when, question mark. Yada kada, when put together means yada kada, whenever. Whenever, va, indeed, api, even, eshaha vipaścit, eshaha he, vipaścit, one who has got knowledge. Vipaścit is the wise person, is the one who has got that tattvajnana. Even whenever brahmani anante, in that infinite Brahman, in that limitless kevala Brahman, anumatramapi bhedaṃ paśyati. Paśyati sees bhedaṃ, sees difference. How? Anumatramapi, even a wee bit. Anu means that small atom. anumatramapi bhedaṃ paśyati, atha, then, amuṣya, for such a person, for that wise person who is seeing the difference now, bhayaṃ, there will be fear. Tadaiva, then alone there will be fear for such a person. Atha amuṣya bhayaṃ tadaiva. Acha, okay. So, a wise person, whenever sees even a wee bit of difference in that supreme infinite Brahman, at that moment there arises a fear for that person. The question is, fear from what? Shankaracharya says here, yadvīkṣitaṃ bhinnatayā pramādāt, that yadvīkṣitaṃ, that which is seen, bhinnatayā, as different from you, pramādāt, because of inadvertence, that itself becomes cause of fear. Careful. What is the point Shankaracharya is making here? For a wise person, as long as he remains in that kevala bhava, in that kaivalya, as long as he remains rooted, established in that experience of Brahman, there is no fear. But the moment the person makes even a slightest of difference, saying that this is different from me, then what? What that person sees to be different from him itself causes the fear. Another Upanishad, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad also, which is in Yajurveda, says, dvitiyādvai bhayaṃ bhavati. Fear always rises from the second, from the thought of the second. See, even this fear is, very different level of fear that is being spoken of. Even in our life we can see, fear is always from second, from something other than me. Think about it. Many people, they say, Vedji, I am very afraid. Of what? Of staying alone at home. I am very afraid. Now, actually speaking, you are not afraid of staying alone. You are afraid that somebody other than you exists in the home. That's what is creating fear. If you are really alone, then there is no fear. Isn't it? In the movies, etc., thriller movies, etc., they will show that the person is going and looks behind, thinks that something is following me. It's actually his own shadow. But the moment you think that the shadow is different from me, that shadow becomes cause of my fear. Isn't it? Sometimes your hand alone touches the chair and the chair starts to move and you start getting afraid. What is this chair? Chair is moving. You only touched it. In the comedy movies, etc., they will show that somebody is scared of his own hand. But the moment you understand it is my own hand, there is no fear. You see, very high level of Vedanta they are telling, but they don't know that they are telling very high level of Vedanta. The point is what? Whenever you see something different from you, then there arises fear. Fear from what? From that same object, what you see to be different from you. The moment you see oneness, the moment you see non-duality, then there is abhaya, then there is a fearlessness. So, pramādāt, because of inadvertence, that's the topic which got over. No? So, he's continuing. He says that pramāda, the moment because of pramāda, you create this bheda drishti. You see something different from you, there arises fear. Now, again here, fear is upalakshana. Fear is just mention of one negativity of the mind and all other negativities are to be understood. What do you mean by that? When it is said fear arises, desire, anger, jealousy, everything comes. From what? From the thought of second. From the thought of something other than me. As long as there is oneness, as long as there is one kevala Atman, Brahman, there is no fear, no desire, no anger. See, what will you desire if there is nothing other than you? What will you get angry on? What will you be jealous of? envious of desire, nothing will be there. If there is only kevala, if there is only Brahman, unlimited, infinite, limitless, then there is no fear, there is no desire, there is nothing. But because of pramāda, inadvertence, the moment you see difference, there arises fear. There arises fear means there arises mind and the hundreds and thousands of modifications of that mind. From where does it start? That something is different from me. So we are going one step before Vishaya-anuchintana, you see. You think that the Vishaya is different from you. Then comes the Vishaya-anuchintana, Shobhanadhyasa and Sankalpa and Kama, etc. It all starts by this difference, that something is different from me. Now what? One more point he says. What does he say? Let us see. Verse number 332. śrutismṛtinyāyaśatairniṣiddhe dṛśye'tra svātmamatiṃ karoti upaiti duḥkhopari duḥkhajatam niṣiddha karta samalim lucho yatha śrutismṛtinyāyaśatairniṣiddhe dṛśye'tra svātmamatiṃ karoti upaiti duḥkhopari duḥkhajatam niṣiddha karta samalim lucho yatha. Vedji, what is the problem? Sometimes you say that we have misunderstood something that is not me to be me. Don't you say all this all the time? That the actual problem is that aham bhava, aham adhyasa, body, mind, intellect, I am not, but I think I am that. Now you are saying that you see body, mind, intellect to be different from yourself. That is the problem. You please, you first make up your mind. Seeing something other than me is the problem, or seeing something as me is the problem? Understand the question? Understand the question? Sometimes we say that body, mind, intellect we consider to be me. That is the problem. Now here you are saying that you see something to be different from you. That is the problem. What exactly is problem? Both are problem. Huh? That is okay. Both are problem or okay. But is body, mind, intellect different from me, or is it not different from me? Now that you answer first. Before that, don't enter into anything. You see, body, mind, intellect is not there. Using the body, using the mind, using the intellect, I am telling you that the body, mind, intellect is not there. So if you think it exists, that itself is the problem. Now if you think that it is something which is not the real self, it is another problem. And if you think that it is you, the ego, it is another problem. You see, you understand how it is happening? First, something that does not exist is given existence. Then you say that it is something which is different from the self. And then you say that it is me, the jiva. From the standpoint of the self, it is said that there is nothing which is different from jiva, from the self. There is nothing which is different from that self, from that Brahman, whatever you want to call. But jiva says what? I am this body, mind, intellect who is different from the self. You understand? So when it is said that seeing something other than you is a problem, we are talking of ourselves as the self. When it is said that the seeing body, mind, intellect to be me is the problem, that me is the jiva we are talking about, not the self. Okay? So seeing anything other than the self is a problem. Seeing something as jiva, as me, that individual ego, is also a problem. Who am I? I am the self and not the jiva. For that self, there is nothing which is not the self. Why? Because self is kevala. It alone is there. There is nothing other than it. For the jiva, because of considering one body, mind, intellect to be itself, considers other bodies, other minds, other intellects to be different from itself. You see? So, identification with one upathi, one set of upathi, creates distinction with other sets of upadhis. Self says, I am everything, including the body, mind, intellect. Jiva says, I am this body, mind, intellect alone. This partial identification is the problem. The total identity is not a problem. Again, I will tell you. Partial identification. Why should I say partial? Identification is always partial. Identification is the problem. Identity is the solution. You understand or you think ignorantly that I am this body, mind, intellect. That's the problem. But you understand that everything is me, including the body, mind, intellect, then it is a solution. So, am I body, mind, intellect or not? Yes also, no also. If you think that you are only body, mind, intellect, then you are not body, mind, intellect. But if you think that I am everything including body, mind, intellect, then you are body, mind, intellect. But in the final truth, what is that? There is no body, mind, intellect. So the question dismisses itself. Are you getting? Vedji, this is what I don't like. You keep changing your standpoints. What is this? See, according to the point, you have to change the standpoint, otherwise point will be lost. What Shankaracharya is trying to explain to us here is, from the standpoint of the self, there is absolutely no difference with anything. Now, if you give something existence apart from the self, that object itself, that person itself will become source of your fear. The moment dvitiya comes, there arises fear. Now, on this topic, because of not understanding this correctly itself, many people have many doubts. They always say that bhakti is dvaita. Bhakti is not dvaita. Dvaita is a philosophy. Somebody can be bhakta in that dvaita philosophy also. Somebody can be bhakta in the advaita philosophy also. So, what do you actually mean by dvaita and advaita? Dvaita says there are two realities. Advaita says there is only one reality. Anything other than it is mere imagination or superimposition. It is not saying that there are no two things. Advaita is not saying there are no two things. Advaita saying is there is only one thing. The second thing that appears is imagination. There are no two realities. That's what Advaita says. Reality is one. Reality is one. Okay, be clear about this. In Advaita itself, there is concept of Ishvara. There is no problem with that. Why? We don't have a problem accepting Ishvara. But we say that Ishvara is actually Brahman alone. Means what? It is not different from Brahman. So there is still one reality, that is Brahman. Please get this point. The moment there arises second, there arises fear. Dvitiyadvai bhayaṃ bhavati. Now here what point Shankaracharya is telling, next point is, now the moment you say body, mind, intellect is there, Dvitiya has already come. That Dvitiya is going to give rise to this ahankara. You will identify with one set of body, mind, intellect, and you will say that the rest of the world is different from me. Now what? Now me, the individual, will be afraid of rest of the world. Will have desire for rest of the world. Will have anger towards rest of the world. Why? Because the difference is already created. This difference is what is creating problem. Now after having created that difference, now you identify with one set of body, mind, intellect. That creates further problem. Bigger problem. Already you have created difference and then you have taken side also in that difference. This is what is depicted in Mahabharata. You see, the first verse of Bhagavad Gita itself says what? Dhritarashtra is asking Sanjaya, Mamakaha Pandava Shaiva Kima Kurvata. Actually, everybody is Kaurava. Kuru Vamsha, everybody is Kaurava, including the sons of Dhritarashtra and sons of Pandu, because they both are from the same lineage. But Dhritarashtra has created that difference. Not only he has created the difference, he has identified with his own sons, and therefore he says, what did they do? And then what? Then arises war. See, this is spiritual point is depicted in the form of a story. Right? The moment you have created difference, then what? Then mind arises. Then there are negative tendencies, positive tendencies. Negative tendencies are more in number, therefore Kauravas are more in number. Positive thoughts are less in number but more powerful. They can defeat if you feed them properly. Pandavas are less in number but more powerful. The story is explaining this spiritual point alone. What is the point? The moment we create distinction, distinction means anything we see to be there other than the self. If you see it as the self, there is no issue. The moment you see something other than the self, first problem you have created. Now, after having created difference, you identify with one, take side of one, you have created next problem. That next problem Shankaracharya is explaining here. śrutismṛtinyāyaśatairniṣiddhe dṛśye'tra svātmamatiṃ karoti. Shruti, the Vedas, Smriti, the other scriptures, Nyaya, logic, Shataihi, by hundreds of Shruti, Smriti and logic, Nishiddhe, that which is Nishiddha. That which is Nishiddha means that which is denied, falsified. What is that which is denied by hundreds of Shrutis? Dṛśye. This Dṛśya world is denied, falsified by the Shruti. The Shruti says that yes, you see the world, but it is not real. Shruti is not saying that you don't see the world. Yes, you see the world, but it is not real. It is falsified by Shruti, Smriti, Nyaya. In this falsified world, yaha svātmamatiṃ karoti, one who identifies, one who says that this is me and this is mine. Ahanta mamata, one who does in the world which is falsified. Then what? Upaiti, such a person suffers. What kind of suffering? Duḥkhopari duḥkhajatam. One sorrow on top of the other. Means what? More and more, one after another sorrow. Like what? Example also he gives. Yatha malimluchaha. Malimluchaha means thief. Yatha, just as saha malimluchaha nishiddha karta. Nishiddha karta, one who has done something which is prohibited. Malimluchaha, thief or criminal. One who has done something which is prohibited. He has committed that and therefore he experiences sorrow one after the other in the same way. A seeker, a wise person who has created the difference and who has identified with that which is unreal, which is not even there, suffers one sorrow after another. If you have not committed anything which is prohibited, you will not experience sorrow. In the same way, if you see the same self, Brahman everywhere, there is no sorrow for you. But the moment you create a crime, what is the crime here? The crime of seeing bheda, crime of seeing something other than you, then such a person suffers. What is the connection between the suffering? The suffering is you have created something other than you and then you have identified with it. So already you are seeing something other than the self, and then you think that that thing is real, and then you stop thinking that you are the self, you start thinking that you are that other object. Right? That is what creates all the sorrow. All this happens because of pramādā. You see the difference, you see something to be real, which is not the self, which is different from the self, and then you identify with it, and then you come to suffer. We can take example of a dream again, as we have been doing. You forget, see, first of all, you see a dream means what? You see something other than yourself. Then you forget that you are the deep sleeper, you are the sleeper who is sleeping comfortably in your home, and you think that you are the dreamer, the limited one who is going to suffer. Then what? Then as the dream progresses, you either enjoy or suffer based on the experiences of the dream, forgetting totally that you are neither enjoying nor suffering, you are sleeping comfortably. You forget that. In the same way, self is there, kevala, without any distinction, without any limitation. The moment we forget that and we see something to be different from the self, there arises then identification for that object, and because of that identification, we become limited. That limitless self now has become limited. Not actually has become limited, but you forget that you are that limitless self and you think that you are this limited individual ego. Then comes the suffering. Why? Limitation is going to bring suffering. Right? That is what happens. So Shruti says this. Where does Shruti say that the world is not real? See, dṛśya is nishiddha. That is what he is telling. See, nishiddhe dṛśye. Where is Shruti telling that world is not real? Na iti, not this, not this. Neha na nasti kinchana. There is indeed no multitude. Neti Brihadaranyaka Neha na nasti kinchana Kathopanishad. Both from Yajurveda. Smriti also says nasat tannasaduchyate. Bhagavad Gita, part of Smriti. There also it says that it is asat. It's not sat. Right? Nyaya also says, Nyaya logic also says, what does it say? Logic says, yo yasya drashta satasmat bhinnaha. You are seeing something. See now, interesting, okay? This body, mind, intellect I have considered to be myself. And this myself is not the self, but is the individual ego. So first you have to understand that I am not the body, mind, intellect. And then you have to understand that I am body, mind, intellect and I am everything else also. Isn't it? Very interesting Vedanta is. First it says that I am not the self. Why? Because I am seeing. The seer has to be different from what is seen. Yo yasya drashta satasmat bhinna. The seer of something is different from that thing. And then what do you say? Yad drishyam, that which is seen, that jadam, it is inert. Yad jadam, tan nashwaram, is perishable. Yad nashwaram, tan mithya, it is unreal. Yad mithya tad asat, it is non-existent. Which means what? First I have to say that I am not this. I am the self and not the body, mind, intellect. And then you have to say body, mind, intellect is not there. But I am experiencing. If you are experiencing, understand that it is the self alone, not different from the self. Okay. Many people don't understand from what standpoint Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta is telling all these things, and they think that we are confused. No, we are not. There is absolute clarity. Understand the standpoint, you will understand the point. So when it is said, I am not the body, mind, intellect, means the jiva who considers oneself to be the body, mind, intellect is told, I am not this. When it is said, I am the body, mind, intellect and everything else, the self as substratum is the body, mind, intellect and everything else. And then when it is said, there is no body, mind, intellect, because it is not real. From the level of that self Brahman, there is no body, mind, intellect. Okay, all three statements are correct. Right? You have to just understand from what standpoint that statement is made. Now here the point that Shankaracharya is saying is, the moment we see something other than the self, bheda drishti, then that other thing will create fear. How will it create fear? Because you start identifying with one thing and therefore you have fear from other thing. You start identifying with one body, mind, intellect, the other body, mind, intellect will create problem for you. That is how the fear, that is how the suffering will start. Interesting thing also, if we see here, subtly one point Shankaracharya has mentioned is given example of a thief. And he says here, Nishiddha karta malim luchaha yatha duḥkhopari duḥkhajatam upaiti. A criminal, a thief who does prohibited action suffers, goes through sorrows one after other. Very important point related to dharma, okay? Now, I am not talking about Brahman, the reality aspect. Now, I am taking the example and expanding that point. The result of sin, papa, is dukkha. This we have so far understood from the standpoint of spirituality, isn't it? Any action you do, if it is a good action, then it will result in punya, which will give sukha. If it is a wrong action, prohibited action, bad action, then it will result in papa, will give dukkha. Now think from dharma perspective also. You see, many times we ask this question, or that person is doing so many wrong things but he is not getting any punishment. Wrong understanding we have got. It is not possible. If a person has done wrong, will be punished. The punishment is the sorrow that the person is experiencing from the moment he has done wrong. He or she, whoever it is. Why? Because that person knows that I have done something wrong. So the moment sees police, fear comes. Now the police doesn't know he has done anything wrong. But the fear is sorrow. So the person has started suffering the moment he has done anything wrong. Now to maintain a social order, there are laws and punishments which are decided. But somebody who escapes law does not escape result of his sin. Please get this point absolutely clear. One can bypass the law, escape from the law, but not from the result of one's actions. Bhagavan's law you cannot cheat. Any law of the society of a country you can cheat, you can find the loophole and get away with some wrongdoing, but in the law of the Lord you cannot escape. If you have done wrong, you will suffer. And interestingly, Bhagavan's law works immediately. Doesn't even have to wait. From that moment onwards, you start suffering. You may not experience it, you may not understand it, but you are suffering. It's exactly like those people who are smoking cigarettes and enjoy it. They are not enjoying, they are suffering, but they think that the suffering is enjoyment. That very moment the sorrow starts, that itself is the result of the wrongdoing. Now, dharma point I have explained. Now come back to the spiritual point. For a spiritual seeker, what is a sin? Any thought that takes you away from the self is sin. The thought of bheda drishti itself is sin. Seeing something to be different from me, seeing something to be jiva, individual, that itself is sin. And that sin results in the sorrow of the samsara. Why are we suffering? Because we have created a sin. But Vedji, I am following dharma. Yes, from the perspective of dharma, you have not done anything wrong. But you have created a grave sin. What? that you have considered something to be different from you. Dvitiyadvai bhayaṃ bhavati, that bhaya itself is sorrow. That sin you have created. Right? Now, that is what now Shankaracharya explains. Again, continuing the same thought, continuing the same example, he makes two paths very, very clear. One who is following the truth, following the reality, one who is not. Let us see. Verse number 333. Satyabhisandhanarato vimuktah mahatvamatmiyam upaiti nityam mithyabhisandhanaratastu naśyet dṛṣtam tadetad yadachaurachaurayoh satyabhisandhanarato vimuktah mahatvamatmiyam upaiti nityam mithyabhisandhanaratastu naśyet dṛṣtam tadetad yadachaurachaurayoh. There is also pathabheda of chorachorayoh. Yadetad achorachorayoh, chaurachaurayoh. Both pathas are there, that is fine. Chau. Two pathas are there, both are fine. What is he saying? Satya abhisandhana ratah. Ratah, one who revels. Abhisandhana, being established, satya, in the truth. One who revels in or is established in the truth. Vimuktah san, being free. Mahatvam, atmiyam, nityam upaiti. Always attains that eternal glory of the self. Atmiyam, of the self. Mahatvam, greatness, glory. One who is established in the truth, T capital, not truth according to dharma. We are talking about the truth according to Brahma, the truth. One who is established in that truth is liberated and therefore experiences the glory of the self. On the other side, mithya abhisandhana ratahatu, one who is established in the mithya world, one who considers the world to be different from the self, one who considers the world to be real, one who considers the unreal world to be real, and therefore is established in that unreal, mithya abhisandhana ratahatu naśyet. Such a person gets destroyed. Dṛṣtam, this is seen. Where tadetad dṛṣtam, this indeed is seen. Now example, he is saying achaura chaurayoho, in case of achaura and chaura. In case of the achaura means one who has achaura means non-criminal activity and chaura means criminal activity. And if the pathabheda, other pathabheda you say achora chorayoho, then it is seen in the case of non-criminal and criminal. Achaura chaurayoho, non-criminal activity and criminal activity. Achora chorayoho, non-criminal and criminal. Okay, so it is seen in case of non-thief and thief, non-criminal and criminal. What do you mean? In the olden days, one interesting punishment used to be given. How to determine whether the person has done any crime or not. Very interesting punishment was there. They used to give hot iron or hot spear in that person's hand. And if he gets burnt, is a criminal. If not getting burnt, is not a criminal. Now, somebody you see, they take it very literally. And they go into physics and chemistry part of it. And they say how it is possible. And the point is, one who is approaching that hot rod with the clear thought that I have not done anything wrong, nothing bad will happen to me. And one who knows that they have done wrong and therefore is approaching that hot spear with fear, By the look of them only, they will know who is the criminal and who is not the criminal. You don't have to literally take it that only criminals used to get, burnt and the non-criminal will not get burnt. Don't take it literally. It is exactly like what that police officers, etc., they do, no? They take out the gun and they put it on the criminal. I will count till 3. You tell me the truth till I say 3, or otherwise I will shoot you. There is no bullet in the gun. But he does like that. Then what? One who is really criminal, before he says 3, he will say, I will tell you. But one who is really innocent, who has not done anything, he says, I can't. Because I am telling the truth. There is nothing more that I have to tell. He will not be afraid. He says, oh, my prarabdha, you kill me. What can I do? The point is what? One who is innocent gains happiness. One who is criminal gains sorrow. Why? Because one who is innocent has taken recourse to satya, has followed the path of dharma. Whereas one who is a criminal has done something nishiddha and therefore will suffer. This is an example. Now he brings this to spiritual life and he says, one who is focused on the self, established in the self, because doesn't see anything other than the self, does not suffer. On the contrary, experiences the glory of the self. But a person who has done that crime, what the crime? Mithya abhisandhanarata. One who starts reveling in the unreal world, such a person, nashyet, is destroyed. Right? So, if you want to revel in the glory of the self, don't make this mistake of seeing difference. Develop sarvatma bhava. Develop the thought that everything is self. Everything is Brahma. Remember that Brahmastra? That is the same thing. Brahma bhava. Sadbhava vasana was explained there. That same point he is continuing. Develop that. Why? If you don't, you will come to suffer and finally you will get destroyed. Right? Now, he continues further. We will take the remaining verses in the next session. Sufficient for today. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.